Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Weppett, and I'm here to help you unleash your apex potential. And today I want to be looking at the question of whether or not you should be sharing your goals with other people. There's kind of two camps on this issue, and one side says you should absolutely not tell anybody about your goals, keep it to yourself, and let everybody else just see the results. But then on the other side, people say you should be shouting your goals from the rooftops because that'll make it more likely that they will actually happen. So what's the right answer? Well, I'll be sharing with you my take on this issue in today's video. All right, so today's topic might sound like kind of a strange or trivial little point to make. Like, should you talk about your goals or should you not? But I actually think that there is a decent amount of power in this discussion, and it's worth looking at both sides of the argument because I think they really do have impacts on different things. So, we'll start by looking at the camp that says you shouldn't share your goals with other people because there are some good points there. And then we'll look at the other side because there's also some good points there, and then I'll give you sort of my synthesized opinion at the end. So the first argument against talking about your goals with other people is that you run the risk of essentially giving yourself the reward of doing the activity without actually doing it. So for example, maybe you have an artist friend who likes to talk about how they're a writer or they're a painter or they're a musician, but they don't actually really make much. They talk about making their music, or they talk about doing their side project or their business more than they actually work on it. And it's just kind of this perpetual thing that's like a hobby. It's like, oh yeah, I'm cool, I do this cool thing, but they never produce any results. And that's an issue. And part of what happens with that is that you talk about, oh, I'm doing this neat project, and people look at you like, oh, that's neat, tell me more. And then you tell them about it and you feel special. And you get the reward kind of doing the thing without actually doing it. And people kind of get addicted to talking the game. But then when it comes down to actually do the work, well, they already got the reward. So it's like, why actually do it then? Because usually doing these kinds of things is kind of difficult. And so it's like, people can, they can steal themselves of the drive to actually succeed because they give them, it's kind of like spoiling their appetite, by eating a bunch of candy before dinner. It's just like, they're already kind of filled up on some of the stimulation of the process, and then they lose their appetite for the process in general. The second argument against sharing your goals with other people is that if you let them in on what you're trying to do, it's actually going to make the process more difficult. Because if you're doing anything of sufficient complexity or difficulty, you may experience failures. You may experience setbacks. You may, want to actually change direction. And if you're telling everybody like, oh, this is what I'm doing, this is what's going to happen, and then you don't do it, well, then people are gonna talk to you and be like, hey man, how's that thing you were telling me about? Going really good, right? And you're like, no, I crashed and burned. And then you have to have that kind of conversation, and people tend to not like having those kinds of conversations. Or you need to kind of tell them, oh, well, yeah, I was going that direction, but now I'm actually doing something entirely different because I tried that and I hated it. And it's just like you kind of end up looking like a wishy-washy sort of, flip-flop. And, I get that people don't like to have that pressure. They want to be able to go through their process in private and not have any external pressure or eyes judging them or offering opinions and that sort of thing. And that kind of leads into the third argument against it, which makes sense, is that if you start talking about your goals with other people, there's a chance that they will offer opinions that create doubt or confusion or resistance. It's like, hey, I want to build this business, and someone says that's dumb. Then all of a sudden you're just like, you feel stuck, you feel stymied. And, a lot of times people don't know what's best for you. They can just, a lot of times people will just give you bad advice. They'll just give you their own emotional opinions based on their perspective. And I'm not saying there's no value to be had in that sort of thing, but it can certainly make making your own decisions more difficult, especially while you are inexperienced in making your own decisions and you don't really have a strong sense of exactly who you are and what you want to do. And so talking with a bunch of people, it can confuse you a fair bit. And so, people say that's why you shouldn't tell everybody. So let's look at the other side of the argument now. All right. Why you should be sharing your goals with other people. And I think the strongest, most important point here is accountability. If you tell someone that you're going to do something and you put it out there in a public way, there's going to be a lot more pressure for you to actually follow through, as long as you're someone who cares about your word, who cares about, your reputation at all. It's kind of like you are putting your reputation up for collateral if you don't do the thing that you said, right? And for a lot of people, this is actually a really powerful thing. It puts them in a scenario where they can push themselves harder. They can actually think better. This is a thing that I use in coaching a lot, is like, with my clients, for example, it's like they make a commitment that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, and they tell me, then they know if they break that commitment in their mind, like, it creates this sort of situation where it's like, if they're about to break it, they have to think, shit, I'm going to have to tell Mark about this later. And it's not like I punish them or mad at them about it. It's just like, they're going to have to admit they didn't do what they said. And then we're going to have to figure out why and go through all of that. And so it's like, it lets you tap into a certain part of your brain that it's very difficult to reach on your own. Because since we are social creatures, there are actually like pieces of our psychology that we cannot access in isolation. We need to have other people looking at us in order to really, use that power. And accountability is one of those things where it's like, just like we naturally care about what other people think. And so when we put ourselves out there, we make a commitment publicly, that does fundamentally change the way that we process our decisions around that publicly declared intention. The second argument for sharing your goals with other people is that it allows you to talk through and figure out exactly what you're doing and get potentially very valuable feedback. So, the other side said, you're going to hear stuff that's going to confuse you and, mess you up and, knock you off your vision. Well, the opposite side is that maybe you're going to get fantastic advice. Maybe you're actually going to, get some information that's really going to help you, right? Like, talking about your goals with people, particularly who are knowledgeable, they can offer a tremendous amount of guidance and insight. But beyond that, even if you're talking to someone that doesn't really know what they are, they're not an expert on the thing you're pursuing, just the act of talking about what you're trying to do, just putting it all into words, can really help you solidify your intention, get clarity on your vision, and that sort of thing. So, that is powerful and that is useful. And finally, it is useful to talk about your goals because it helps you internalize that as who you are, as something that you're doing. So it's like, yeah, there is the temptation that you can just kind of live the high of saying you're the person without actually following through. But in some areas, you need to start talking like you are that person, right? Like you need to start at least acting it out before, if you ever want to get over that imposter syndrome feeling, right? Like when I first started being a life coach, it was hard for me to tell people that that's what I was doing because it was so new. It felt like I couldn't really say it yet. It's like, but like at a certain point I had to start saying, like when people ask me, what do you do? I was like, I help guys quit pornography. I coach guys through that. And that's what I was doing initially when I started, coaching. And once I started owning that and I started speaking about that and I started saying, yeah, that's what I'm doing, it really helped me own it a lot better. But while I was like hedging it, kind of talking around it, that sort of thing, it showed a lack of security in my path and like it reinforced an insecurity in my path. And so the way that you speak publicly, it does help shape your identity, which is why speaking lies in public can really mess you up psychologically. I know Jordan Peterson, he talks about that, like people who, get in the habit of speaking untruths, how that psychologically really messes them up. And so like making sure that you focus, like you align your speech with your true intentions, it is healthy to a degree, especially when, you're trying to step into a new way of operation and make a change in your life. So I do think that, I can see both sides of that for sure. So what's the answer? Should you be sharing your goals with other people or not? Well, I think the answer, like with most things, it's somewhere kind of in the middle. And so the first point would be you share your goals to the extent you are certain that you are going to be sticking with them and accomplishing them. So like the more confident you are that you are going to do something, the more you're going to want to probably talk about it. You know, the more you can talk about it safely. Like if you're unsure, if you're going to be trying something new and you're completely uncertain about how it's going to go, and you might be making a big pivot later and that sort of thing, or it might, fail catastrophically, I can understand if you just want to kind of keep that to yourself and see how things go first. Wait till things solidify, so then you don't need to constantly like go back and be like, oh yeah, that totally failed, or oh yeah, I'm completely changing direction. It's just a more comfortable conversation, lets you do it in private, lets you adjust and that sort of thing. But if you're really confident, like this is what I'm going to do, I'm absolutely going to go at this hard, then tell people, get that social accountability, get that identity reinforcement, so it's like, let it be gauged upon how certain you are. The second thing that I think is important is you really only want to be sharing with a small group of people that you trust, right? Like you don't need to tell everybody what you're going to do. Not everybody's entitled to that information, and it's probably not even helpful, right? Like, that's where I think people get into the just grasping at the empty social points of like, talking about shit. Like, I think really if you want to do it right, you have a group of people who you trust, whose opinions you value, and, you share it with them. And that's it could be close friends, it could be family members, it could be a community like, what we built here in the Universal Man, Vanguard. It's like, have a group of people who will support you, have your back, hold you accountable in a good way, help you work through things, etc. That's where the real value is at. You're just telling the random person you're sitting next to on the bus what you're doing. That's kind of a toss-up there, right? Like, but getting that small group that's got your back, that can be really useful. And the final point I have on this topic is that you don't want to just talk about your goals with that, small trusted group like once, okay? What you want to do is you want it to be an ongoing conversation. You want them to be able to be there to help you sort through whatever sort of difficulties you're having, any sort of roadblocks you're hitting, maybe some confusion. You got to talk through the variables to figure out what path you want to go. Maybe you screw up and you need them to ask you about it so that you can admit it, make an adjustment, etc. Right? Like, so it's like, it's best not just as a one-time declaration, but as an ongoing relationship. And so like, find a way to get this, because if you can get a support system like this that can help you with your goals, just having them there to regularly talk to, support you, hold you accountable, that sort of thing, I can't even describe to you how powerful that is. It's like you find an extra gear in your brain, because it's like I was saying, it's like a huge chunk of your psychology can only really be accessed through social interaction. And so if you're not tapping into that, then you're really missing out on a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of personal power. So, if you want suggestions on how to do that, then join the Vanguard. That's why I built it, so that guys would have this. Because I know a lot of guys, they don't have the trusted group of friends. They don't have that family member who they can really turn to and like walk with them in their self-development journey. Maybe they got people who love them, but they just kind of don't understand what they're going for or what they're trying to accomplish or that sort of thing. And so they can't offer meaningful feedback or support other than just like, okay, I trust in you, I believe in you. It's like, okay, that's nice, but it's so much better when you can get more. So, find that somewhere, even if it's not with us, but, if it is, at least maybe check it out, right? It's $5 to check out the Vanguard, if you want to see what it's all about. But that's pretty much what I have for you guys today. Hopefully you found this conversation useful and helpful in some degree. If you did, please like, please subscribe, please hit that notification button, and share this with anyone who you think could use the message. So I will see you guys in the next one. Ooh, yap.